I'm never gonna have kids. They take up too much time. I am too invested in my career. And then I met my husband and we dated for, I think, 7 years before we got married. Then a surprise happened. I ended up getting pregnant. This was my fate, and my life has developed in a way that I never would have expected. Looking back, when I was a little girl, dreaming about what I would be like when I got older, of course, when you're 5 to 10, you expect, or you're expected, to get married and have kids. And I always thought in those conversations or in those dream scenarios, sharing those with friends, that I would be married with maybe 5 kids, right? And then you go off to college and realize that the conventional, traditional route isn't a necessity anymore. I'm a woman and I can do whatever I want now, right? You know, the 60s are over. There's been some adjustments since the 70s and females in the workplace, which I've heard firsthand stories on that, and I've talked about some of those before in my previous videos. But you know, being born, and I was born in '84, and going to high school and middle school in the '90s, and graduating, pseudo graduating from high school in 2000. I was supposed to leave in 2002, ended up testing out in 2000 and going to college at that point in my life. And really around 16, I established that I probably wouldn't get married and I probably wouldn't have kids. And that really wasn't the vision for my life that I saw. I saw just being a bachelorette forever and having fun and, you know, partying until my rocking chair days. And then I met my husband and we dated for, I think, 7 years before we got married. I met him when I was just before I turned 19. And of course, when we met, we had no ambitions of getting married and just wanted to have fun and live like bachelors until our dying days. Then a surprise happened. I was competing in the NPC national competition for basically bodybuilding. And I was in the bikini class, which was really like the entry class, the class that most of the girls want to do, and the class that has the picturesque version of really what a woman should look like. Very toned, not overly muscular. So I did that. And I was doing a lot of, or not a lot, I did a couple of bikini competitions and was nationally qualified to move on and go for my pro card. And I didn't really have a whole lot of ambition to do that. I saw the money pit that was involved in that process. And at that time, I had calculated that it probably cost me about $4,000 to go that route, to just try, to see what I would do on that stage. And as I was really contemplating going down that route and being a fitness coach, and I have done fitness coaching before, and I'll have a separate video on that, my experience behind that, and what I learned from that portion of, really, it was a side hustle. Insurance has always been my big girl job, but you know, I guess it's not as interesting to people, you know, talking about insurance. So I always liked having that fitness component and working with professional athletes and having that as a conversation to make myself more interesting. And I remember saying, I'm never gonna have kids. The ROI on kids is not good. They take up too much time. I am too invested in my career. I wanted to just focus on my career, and that was fulfillment enough. So then after, you know, getting married and then competed in NPC, I ended up getting pregnant. and decided that, I wasn't 16 and pregnant, and of course, gonna move forward, and this was my fate. And I went through a huge challenge at that time, and I actually created a video that's called the identity crisis, I think, of mom's identity crisis or something like that. And I did go through really an identity crisis. Probably for the first 18 months of having a baby. And I wasn't the sort where, the baby comes out and it's this life, brain altering experience. It was all very surreal to me in the beginning. And it's still surreal to me, actually. I just had another baby. He's 5 months old. And I look at him and I go, oh my gosh, this is my baby. And I think it's because unlike some women, I didn't expect that to be a part of my life. I hadn't been planning on it. All of this is totally unplanned. I never, did any fertility testing or anything like that. I was, in fact, on birth control when I got pregnant with my first child. And that is just how the cookie crumbles, I guess. So having her was like I said, huge blessing and identity crisis. Looking back, the biggest kind of takeaway from that experience was me noticing that my brain was associating me with my mom, and understanding that just because I am a mom doesn't mean that I am my mom. And over the years, I've gotten very, knock on wood, maybe better than most at observing my own thoughts. And I was able to catch this thought one day, and it had obviously been in my subconscious, and I was thinking it without thinking it. And so from there, when I was able to kind of really wrap my mind around that thought and saying, wow, I can't believe I'm telling myself this. Of course, I'm not my mom. I don't have to be like my mom to be a mom. And I don't even have to be a mom how my mom was a mom. Not that my mom was a bad mom. It was just, I was having a hard time really identifying exactly who I was as a mom. So I worked on that. I would write lists and what are the behaviors of a good mom in what I see as a good mom, because my mom was not a working mom for the majority of my childhood. She, for the most part, was a stay-at-home mom. Yes, they owned a business at one point, and yes, my mom was the bookkeeper. But outside of those short years, a few short years, my mom was at home. And so me being a working mom and really wanting to have that as a priority in my life, and my career as a priority in my life, and making money and being somewhat successful was a very important thing for me. And I didn't want to give that up. So I was really struggling with that paradox in my mind, which doesn't exist. It was just a problem that my brain decided to have. So just because I wasn't a stay-at-home mom, maybe I couldn't be the best mom possible. And so at some point I decided that that just wasn't true, and that I would be the sort of mom that I wanted to be, and that I would prioritize not only working and providing for my family, but also do these actions that in my mind would show myself that I could be a good mom. So I how many times would I take my kids to the park in a week? How many, when would we go to the zoo? What are these things that in my mind defined, what are these actions I could take to be a good mom? Like what are good moms do? Good, in my mind, good moms read to their kids every night. So I penciled that in and had scheduled it. And I went through that in detail in my identity crisis video. And my strategy to dealing with that and creating actionable items to rebuild my identity around being a mom. So that has been really profound for me. And now I find the thought, because having a nanny now with the second child, that sometimes the thought comes up like, oh, you're just dismissing your children. This other person is raising your children. And that's just not true. The interactions that they have with me is far more time and impactful than the interactions with the nanny. So I still don't, I still hear that sometimes in my brain pop up, but that's something that I address as the thoughts come through, and talk to myself about that. Please like the video. Thank you for hanging out until the end, and I'll see you next time.